Joining us now, former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor, and former Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, also an MSNBC political analyst, Rick Stengel. Ambassador Taylor, what exactly does Ukraine need? What do they need to walk away from after this, after this meeting?
A couple things, Katie. They need that security guarantee that Keir was just talking about. They can't agree to any ceasefire or anything going forward without a guarantee of their security. That is some way to defend themselves against another Russian attack. They need to have that. So that's the first thing. And it sounds like there's a lot of progress on that. Doesn't have to be American boots on the ground. The Brits and the French have been very forward-leaning on putting together a European force that they would put on the ground in Ukraine to enforce a ceasefire and to deter another Russian invasion. But the other thing is that ceasefire. That's what President Zelensky has talked about. That's what he talked about with President Trump and the rest of the Europeans last Wednesday before the meeting with President Putin. And so they're still of the view, strong view, that they need to stop the killing. And that, I think, they will be making the case to President Trump. The way to stop the killing, which is what he's talked about all along, is you have a ceasefire and then you have these negotiations.
How much damage has been done, Rick, or how much damage can be cleaned up, I guess, after what we've seen from Donald Trump and his treatment of our NATO allies, his affinity again for Vladimir Putin? Has that materially changed our position in the world?
Yes, Katie, it has. And I'll get to that in 1 second. But as part of that, I just want to note again for the viewers how unorthodox, untraditional, maybe crazy it is to have a press conference for the world's reporters before having your negotiation with Ukraine and the European partners. I mean, it's crazy. And it speaks to the fact that what we saw in Anchorage, the lack of preparation, the lack of knowledge, the fact that Trump seems to be finding out things that everybody else knew before. And that speaks to your question, because this is just a small example, but it's the unraveling of the liberal Western order that the U.S. created after World War II, that we not only created, and we were the foundation of. And in so many ways, that idea that American power was humanitarian, that American power spoke about human rights, that American power protected democracy, that's completely gone out the window. That's been our policy for 75 years. And part of the reason that the Europeans are here, by the way, it's much more like an intervention than it is anything else. Part of the reason that they are here is to speak up for those values, because the European Union is sort of the last place on earth now that speaks up for human rights, that speaks up for the promotion of democracy. That was American policy, since before the end of World War II, and it only increased after World War II. So I think the damage is pretty bad. I hope it's not permanent. I hope we can come back to some semblance of that after the Trump era is over.
How strong can the European Union get? I mean, can they match or equal the power of the United States? Say they can't rely on the U.S. any longer, and, obviously they believe that trust is shaky. Can they stand up enough power amongst themselves, enough military might, enough economic might to stand on their own 2 feet without the United States?
Over time, they clearly can. Over time. Sorry, Rick. I would just say, Katie, that sure. I mean, look at the economic potential of the European Union and the size of not just their economy, but also the size of the population. That's a strong part of the world. Europe is a strong entity. And if they put their mind to it, which it sounds like they're starting to do, these commitments of 3.5% to 5% of GDP for defense, that gets them a lot of money. That gets them a lot of capability. That gets them a lot of defense industrial capacity. So the short answer is, of course they can. It takes time and it takes a will to do it.